Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've stood before this House and highlighted examples on many occasions of harrowing abuse and heartbreaking tragedy where our young people have been let down. I've highlighted cases of neglect and death that I do not want to see happen again. I've spoken of baby Nāreo, baby Ru, and I've spoken of Malachi, Maya, Carla, Leanne, Faluti Vaiala, and I've spoken of the Kahui twins, Nia Glassie, and there are many more. These are just a few of the young people who have passed, and do not include those who have survived, but not without a lifetime of trauma from the impact of their abuse. Let this not be our future as a country. Let there be options and tools available to us to resolve this. This is why I am so motivated, Madam Speaker, to put the safety and well-being of young people front and centre in all our decision making. And removing Section 7AA is just one of the components of helping to ensure this. I've seen firsthand the devastations on caregivers' faces and heard the pain in their voices after being told a forever home does not necessarily mean that. I've spoken previously of a family that managed to go back a few generations and find a Māori relative to avoid a reverse uplift after they were told their child might be removed from them because they were not Māori. The system has not been working as well as it can, and it needs some real change. My responsibility and my mission is to do everything I possibly can to help young people and to ensure their well-being and to provide the best outcomes for our young people in care. I want our system to ensure that every child in this country is raised in a loving and stable home that sets them up to succeed in life, regardless of their race or culture. I would like to thank the Social Services and Community Committee for its examination of this bill. I thank and acknowledge the 3,748 submitters who contributed to the consideration of this bill. And I especially acknowledge the submitters who spoke from personal experiences in the care system, including those who also contributed to the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse in State Care and in the care of faith-based institutions. Care experienced young people, caregivers, whānau, hapu, iwi, I want to thank you all sincerely for sharing your perspectives. By majority, the Social Services and Community Committee recommends the passing of the bill, with amendments aimed at preserving the strategic partnerships Oranga Tamariki has with iwi and Māori organisations. This change is set out in the legislative statement. When I became Minister for Children, I made it clear that my intention was to focus the children's system on the well-being and individual needs of children. Of all the submissions on this bill, the importance of a child's well-being and safety was the most prevalent theme throughout. Some submitters, even ones who saw 7AA as well-intentioned, were concerned that it had mandated some harmful practice, was misinterpreted by many social workers, and was a barrier to best practice when making placement decisions with children. Unfortunately, 7AA has been used in some cases to justify unsafe care decisions or cause disruption for children and caregivers. I want our system to ensure that every child in this country is raised in a loving, stable home that sets them up, regardless of where they come from. Removing 7AA from the Act reinforces the need to put safety of the children first. And I want to acknowledge the submitters who emphasise the importance of culture, whānau, hapu and iwi connections. I want to be really clear. I have never said that whānau, hapu and iwi should not play a role in the care of our young people. I support empowering all communities, and the Act already required this prior to the inclusion of 7AA. The repeal of 7AA will not alter that. What this bill does do is ensure that these cultural considerations are never at the expense of children and young people's well-being and safety. I maintain that 7AA has created a conflict for Oranga Tamariki when making decisions that are in the best interests of the child or a young person. I consider that 7AA allows children and young people to be treated as an identity group first and a person second. And it creates a divisive system that has had a negative impact not only on caregivers, but children as well. Again, the most prevalent theme raised by over 1,500 submitters was the importance of wellbeing and safety. Most recognised that culture is important, but many submitted that this should never be considered at the expense of safety. I hear the concerns submitters shared that 7AA has led to decisions that favoured the interests of families, social workers and legislators over what was the right decision for the child. If family or whānau is the right place for a young person, that's what should happen. But unfortunately, that's not always appropriate, and we need to make sure that safety and wellbeing come first. There were caregivers who submitted on this bill who shared their experiences with 7AA being used to justify decisions that were not in the best interests of the child or young person they were caring for. In some of these submissions, caregivers shared the emotional and stressful experience of having a child being removed from their care to be placed with family or Oranga Tamariki attempting to do so. Those caregivers shared how these practices disregarded the connection and attachment with the child and the trauma this disruption caused for not only the child, but everyone involved and their families. I never want to see a child torn away from a loving home for life because the caregivers are the wrong ethnicity. And I never want to see another child traumatised and sent back to abusers because they are the right ethnicity. That is what Section 7AA has contributed to in some circumstances, and I'm really proud to repeal it. I have always stated that I welcome the robust discussion during select committee process. And I acknowledge the concerns many submitters raised about the impact of this bill on strategic partnerships. As I've said before, this bill does not prevent Oranga Tamariki from retaining its current strategic partnerships or entering into new ones. But I want submitters to know that their voices have been heard, which is why I support the recommendations of the Select Committee to maintain the strategic partnership provisions within the Act, locating them alongside the other duties of the Chief Executive. Strategic partnerships support the delegation of statutory functions to community organisations, which in turn has contributed to keeping children and young people out of the care system in the first place, by enabling community-led early prevention and support. Some submitters shared how the strategic partnerships have been essential in addressing the needs of children and young people through culturally responsive care. Existing strategic care and partners also submitted on the bill and shared how these have fostered strong relationships with Oranga Tamariki. Many of them felt that these partnerships needed to be kept in legislation, and that's why I commend the committee's recommendation. Removing 7AA from the Act reinforces the need to put safety of the child first, and if this bill prevents just one child from being placed in a harmful environment based on ethnicity first, or prevents just one child from being removed from a loving and safe home simply because of this fact, it will have done its job. As a Māori person who has experienced the care system myself, I can tell you there's not much difference between a Māori child and any other child when it comes to dealing with the care and protection system. We want to know that we're loved. We want to know that we're safe. And we want to know that we're going to be cared for by those who are supposed to protect us and love us. This is why it's so important to treat children as a child first, as an identity second, so that all children can have a chance for a better future and a better life. I will continue to provide the best tools and options to support them to help protect all children from harm, because abuse and neglect does not discriminate. Whether you are rich, poor, Māori or non-Māori. And I am so glad that we are making changes across the system. And I am so proud to be a part of a government that prioritises our children. I am pleased that this bill will help provide another option to help safeguard our children and keep them together with loving, caring families in safe homes. Thank you, Madam Speaker.